Good day, everyone. Welcome for today's lesson in Understanding the Self. Now, we're going to discuss about the principles of learning. So, principles refers to the laws of learning. Now, these seven affects the learning of a person. First is readiness, exercise, effect, primacy, recency, intensity, and freedom. But before we're going to discuss that, we must first define what learning is. Learning refers to a process resulting in some modification or change, relatively permanent or it should be permanent, of the ways of thinking, feeling, and actions. Okay? So learning refers to a change that is permanent to the way a person thinks, feels, and acts. Now, before we're going to discuss about this, we must first touch on the learning of a child. Now, here are the steps in childhood learning. The first step is to observe. We're going to watch very carefully the things around them. Next, we will also try to use other sensing methods like listening, touching, or tasting in the process of observation. Now, they will start to ask why and how when something happens. Next step is to imitate or copy the same action, saying, "Let me do it myself," just like monkey see, monkey do. Okay? Learning takes place by repeating the action again and again. Now, here comes the repeating process because the, the learning, the change should be permanent. Now, with the help of repeating, it slowly becomes permanent because they will not easily forget the things that they have done or imitated. Children usually start to ask others to observe them so they can show that they are able to do the activity they have just learned. So they will ask the approval of others, especially adults or their parents, if what they're doing is the same. Now, perform the action for themselves, having learned something. Okay, so this is how the children uh, process learning. Okay, now we are going to start with the first principle of adult learning. Now remember the seven principles that I have mentioned earlier. This is the first. Readiness implies a degree of willingness. So may kagustuhan and eagerness, parang eager talaga na yung parang excited of an individual to learn something new. Individuals learn best when they are physically, mentally, and emotionally ready to learn, and they do not learn well if they see no reason for learning. So, kailangan may motivation, may drive, at may reason. Dapat din prepared yung sarili natin, yung physical, mental, and emotional ng isang person. So, readiness talks about um, a person will only learn effectively if he is ready. If not, the learning process is hard. Okay, it may take a while for the things that they are doing in order to sink in order for them to learn. Next principle is the exercise. Now, the principle of exercise states that those things that are most often repeated are the ones that best remembered. So, medyo may synonym sa repetition. Okay. Your audience will learn best and retain information longer when they have meaningful practice and repetition. So, kung ano yung ideas na na-learn nila, kung ano yung bago nilang na-learn, it's best in order for learning to retain, mag-maintain siya, hindi mawawala, it's best to apply it. It is clear that practice leads to improvement only when it is followed by positive feedback. So, it is clear na yung ginagawa mo na ano na practice um, will only improve over time kapag maganda yung pagkagawa mo. Okay? For example, we are a teacher has just introduced a lesson. So, after the lesson, may exercise na. So, yung exercise is in a form of assessment, such as quizzes, exams, or oral recitations or activities. So, in that case, parang na na the students, the learners are given a chance to apply what they have learned. So, that learning will only improve kapag um, maganda or successfully na-apply yung kanilang bagong natutunan. Okay? So, first is readiness, next is exercise. The human mind is forgetful and it can rarely retain, evaluate, and apply new concepts or practices after a single exposure. So, kailangan talaga may exercise, may repetition. Kasi yung utak natin is only limited. Audiences will not learn complex tasks in a single session. They learn by applying what they have been told and shown. Every time practice occurs, learning continues. Okay? So the important thing is may exercise talaga para naa-apply nila at magiging permanent yung kanilang natutunan, which is till then it will become learning. Third principle is effect. The principle of effect is that learning is strengthened when accompanied by a pleasant feeling or satisfying feeling, and that learning is weakened when associated with an unpleasant feeling. So your learning pala is successful kapag may um, uh, nagbibigay ng magandang magandang feeling, yung pakiramdam sa isang learner. The learner will strive to continue learning as long as it provides a pleasant effect. Now, in the case of, let's say, an exam, or, okay, sa exam muna tayo, kapag um, during that exercise, na-apply successfully ng isang learner yung kanyang bagong na-learn, tapos malaki yung kanyang nakuha, of course, it gives him self-satisfaction. So, nasisiyahan siya. So, in that instance, nagbibigay ng gana sa isang learner to learn more. Okay? That is the parang goal. So, next principle is primacy. Primacy is a state of being first, often creates a strong impression which may be very difficult to change. Now, things learned first create a strong impression in the mind that is difficult to erase. Unteaching or erasing from the mind incorrect first impressions is harder than teaching them correctly in the first place. Now, dito, the principle of primacy talks about um, yung kung ano yung una mong itinuro sa isang learner, yun yung na yun yung it will strongly retain or remain nag-iiwan. So, ayon nga sa isang saying, first impression last. So, kung ano yung una niyang natutunan, kapag mali iyon, of course, it will be difficult to change or to revert back. So, mas mabuti pa yung turuan mo ng tama sa simula't simula pa lang. Kesa sa turuan mo ng mali and you will expect na, oh, I can change this. I can change this later on. I can teach him the right way. No. So, that affects the learning of the person kasi natatagalan. Okay? Now, next principle is, eto pa. The learner's first experience should be positive, functional, and lay the foundation for all that is to follow. See? So let's say for instance sa math, kapag hindi ka, kapag mali yung, let's say, sa arithmetic, so addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, kapag mali na yung, yung fundamentals mo, kapag hindi mo alam yung basic arithmetic or mali, of course, it will be very hard to continue on. So, magkakamali ka talaga doon sa algebra na because you will have to relearn those things, yung mga fundamentals. Okay, for the next principle is recency. Kung gaano ka, let's say, ka-recent. The principle of recency states that things most recently learned are best remembered. So kung ano yung mga bagay na bago mo pa malaman, ay madali mong ma-remember, maalala. Conversely, the further a learner is removed time-wise from a new fact or understanding, the more difficult it is to remember. Now, conversely, meaning opposite, kapag ang isang learner ay parang, let's say, um, bigla na lang na-stop yung, let's say, he is studying about mathematics at bigla lang na-stop. And then, for, let's say, 6 months, tsaka na naman ibalik yung mathematics, then, of course, ano, mahirapan siya sa pag-remember. Okay, so recency really affects the learning in um, permanency-wise, yung pag-retain ng knowledge. Now, next, meron pa pala. Information acquired most recently generally is remembered best. Frequent review and summarizing will help fixing in the audience's mind topics that have been covered. Now, in this case, kung ano yung bago mo lang natutunan, madali mo lang ma-remember. Yung frequent, yung palaging mag-review, mag-recall, mag-recap, at summarize sa mga natutunan ng isang student or learner, yun, it's the solution dito sa etong principle. Kapag yung student ay matagal na siyang, na matagal na niyang na touch yung kaniyang na-learn before. So, it's the only way, it's one of the ways para ma-remember ng isang learner yan. Now, intensity. The more intense the material taught, the more likely it will be retained. A sharp, clear, dramatic, or exciting learning experience teaches more than a routine or boring experience. The principle of intensity implies that a learner will learn more from the real thing than from a substitute. Now, in case, eto ngayon, pandemic ngayon, of course, this affects the intensity of our learning because hindi tayo makaka-hands-on. For instance, sa, let's say, sa driving, yung student, mas madali yun matututo or mas magre-retain yung kanyang natututunan kapag may actual driving. Lesser yung kanyang learning experience kapag let's say sa principles, sa sa libro lang binabasa kung paano mag-drive. So this talks about the intensity kung gaano what we call this kung kaano magbigay ka ng learning experience. So it's much better kung actual talaga. Now, for the case of mechanical engineering, let's say yung mga theories kung paano talaga yung aandar, what is the process of a motor vehicle engine. So it's much better kung actual talaga. Now, that talks about the intensity of learning, the kind of learning experience experienced by the learners. Likewise, a learner is likely to gain greater understanding of tasks by performing them. So dapat may performance talaga, active participation, rather than merely reading about them. The more immediate, so pagkatapos ng discussion, apply agad, and dramatic the learning is to a real situation, the more impressive the learning is upon the learner. Okay? That is why they may say na naman na experience is the best teacher. So dito na-apply yan sa intensity principle or sa principle of intensity in learning. Lastly is the principle of freedom. The principle of freedom states that things freely learned are best learned. Conversely, if the audience is forced to learn something, the more difficult it is for them to learn. Compulsion and forcing are not favorable for personal growth. So yung learning daw, mas madali kapag hindi napipilitan. You are not, you are not forced to learn something. Okay? I think medyo close ito siya sa readiness. But actually, yung readiness kasi ay kasali na din yung mga ibang factors like let's say working environment or in this case learning environment. No? Kapag maingay yung environment, of course it affects the learning. But freedom is different. Nasa tao ito. Okay? Dapat hindi siya napipilitan. Okay, I think that it is that is it for this week. For this video lang pala. Kasi I am trying to catch up kasi medyo marami talaga akong backlog. So, kung sino yung unang makakalagay ng comment ng kanilang cellphone number ay meron akong ano, parang bonus din para sa inyo. So, again, first commenter, may 50 peso load. Okay? I-comment nyo lang yung cellphone number nyo. It doesn't matter what network. Okay? So, see you next time. Bye!